Good morning. We're going to do our lecture on chapter 3 today and then our discussion. And then if we have time, a couple, 2 or 3 videos. This morning we're going to explore how European religious traditions shaped early American religious life and identity. This journey takes us from Catholic missionaries to Protestant reformers, and ultimately to a uniquely American religious landscape. So let's begin with Catholic colonization. The story starts with Christopher Columbus, himself a Catholic, arriving under the sponsorship of the Spanish Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella. It's interesting that he didn't actually land in, if you remember your history, he didn't land in the continent, like the continental United States. Like here, he actually landed first in the Caribbean, actually in what is now the Dominican Republic. Kind of a fun side story. My wife and son were at a missions trip in the Dominican Republic this last summer and actually visited a chapel that was set up by Christopher Columbus in 1492. And that chapel's been there ever since. So that's kind of a cool historic fact in the DR. But these monarchs had a clear vision to expand not just their territory, but their faith. They declared their mission was to ensure the Catholic faith and Christian religion be exalted and be everywhere increased and spread, that the health of souls be cared for, and that barbarous nations be overthrown and brought to faith itself. Note that kind of offensive language almost, that barbarous nations be overthrown. This will be a kind of a highlight of the Catholic rule of different areas. The Spanish approach to converting Native Americans was complex and often controversial. Various religious orders, Benedictines, Dominicans, Franciscans, and Jesuits, approached the mission differently. Some, like theologian Juan Gines de Sepulveda, believed that Native peoples couldn't freely choose Christianity, leading to forced conversions and reducciones, or controlled mission towns where every aspect of life was regulated according to European standards. The economide system became a crucial tool in this process. The system granted Spanish officials land rights and authority over native inhabitants who were required to pay tribute through labor and valuable minerals. Missionaries often supported the system as it gave them access to large groups of people for conversion. Mass baptisms became common, sometimes involving hundreds of people at once, often without their full understanding or even consent. In the French territories, we see a different approach to Catholic colonization. The French journey began in 1534 with Jacques Cartier, his expedition into the St. Lawrence River Valley. Their early interactions with the Iroquois revealed the complex relationship between religious and colonial ambitions. When they erected a cross claiming territory for France, the Iroquois chief Donanica was understandably unimpressed with the symbol of both territorial and religious conquest. By the 1630s, the French had established a more sophisticated Catholic presence in Quebec. The Jesuits built an infrastructure that served both French colonists and missionary efforts. The Ursuline nuns established hospitals and schools, particularly focusing on the female population. This infrastructure supported both growing French colonies and missionary work among the Huron and Iroquois people. The Protestant Reformation fundamentally reshaped Christianity and had a profound effect for American religious development. Martin Luther's 95 Theses challenged core Catholic practices, particularly the sale of simony, usury, and nepotism. His principles of sola fide, which means faith alone, and solo scriptura, and scripture alone, will be cornerstones in Protestant theology. John Calvin's influence was equally significant. Writing from Switzerland, Calvin developed ideas about predestination and theocratic governance that would deeply influence Puritan theology. His Institutes of the Christian Religion provided a blueprint for Reformed churches and eventually shaped many colonial American religious institutions. The formation of the Anglican Church under Henry VIII, while initially more political than theological, set the stage for further religious developments. Though Henry himself remained largely Catholic in theology, the shift of religious authority from Rome to the crown opened the door for later reforms and eventually led to the development of Methodism. The Puritan experiment in Massachusetts represents one of the most adventurous attempts to establish a reformed Christian society in the New World. However, their vision of religious purity often led to conflict and persecution. The case of Anne Hutchinson illustrates this perfectly. Despite her sophisticated theological arguments and scriptural knowledge, her emphasis on personal religious experience over clerical authority led to her banishment in 1637. Also, the Salem witch trials of 1692 represent perhaps the darkest chapter of Puritan history. Over 200 people were accused of witchcraft and 20 were executed. This episode reveals how religious fervor, combined with social tensions and political instability, can lead to tragic consequences. William Penn's Holy Experiment in Pennsylvania offered a different model of religious organization. As a Quaker, Penn had experienced persecution firsthand and sought to create a colony where religious tolerance was fundamental. The Quakers' practice of quietism, silent contemplative worship, and their rejection of religious hierarchy influenced their approach to governance and civil liberties. Pennsylvania became home to a diverse religious population, including Scotch-Irish Presbyterians, Welsh Quakers, and German Mennonites and Lutherans. This diversity created a model of religious pluralism that would later influence American concepts of religious freedom. It should also be noted that Harvard and that area of the country was very much Puritan, and the Harvard was originally established as a Puritan seminary to help them develop ministers for the Puritan faith. And the Baptists that had colonized in Rhode Island wanted their own college, and so they actually established Brown University, which was originally a seminary for Baptist ministers to prepare for ministry. So kind of interesting how those two institutions, although no longer seminaries or Christian orientated anymore, were originally established as religious institutions. The Great Awakening represents a transformative period in American religious history that fundamentally reshaped Protestant Christianity in the colonies. To understand its significance, we need to examine its context, characteristics, key figures, and lasting impact. The breakdown of Puritanism during the late 17th century set the stage for a religious reorientation through the American colonies. While the major revival occurred in the 1730s and 1740s, there were important precursors, such as earlier local awakenings among the Dutch Reformed churches in New Jersey, revival movements in Scottish-Irish Presbyterian churches in Pennsylvania, and also growing dissatisfaction with formal established religious practices. The Great Awakening introduced several distinct features that would become hallmarks of American Protestants. One of them is the emotional conversion experience or new birth, beginning with altar calls. Also, the heightened regard for biblical authority emphasis on Christ's sacrifice, active gospel evangelism, welcoming preaching styles, popular revival meetings, and multi-denominational participation. Some of the key figures of the Great Awakening include Jonathan Edwards. Edwards developed what became known as the religion of the heart, combining intellectual rigor with emotional appeal. He served as a congregational minister in Connecticut. He maintained Calvinist theology while emphasizing personal religious experience. He delivered his famous sermon in 1741, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Which stressed both God's absolute power and the individual's ability to cultivate personal relationships with the divine. This balanced the fear of God's judgment with the possibility of divine grace. You also see the Wesley brothers and Methodism. So you can see John Wesley and Charles Wesley and their contribution during their Oxford years. They founded the Holy Club with other pious Anglican men and served as missionaries in Georgia, which influenced Moravian Arminianism, or they were influenced by Moravian Arminianism, which rejected Calvinist predestination. John Wesley's distinctive teachings were necessity of personal conversion experience, an emphasis on cultivating holiness through self-control, importance of avoiding sin, the innovation of lay itinerant preachers, and then organization of small prayer groups outside the formal church services. You also have George Whitefield, who played a crucial role in unifying various local revivals into an intercolonial movement. He was connected to the Wesley brothers through Oxford's Holy Club and extended his Anglican ministry to the American colonies in the 1740s. He emphasized regeneration or new birth based on teachings in 2 Corinthians. If any man be in Christ, he's a new creature. He urged continuous spiritual vigilance and transformation and developed new preaching methods that reached across denominational boundaries. So the Great Awakening established a pattern of periodic religious revivals. It did not just stop with the Great Awakening, but it continued on through that time and really helped lead up to influencing concepts of religious freedom in America. It also contributed to American religious pluralism, meaning more on the sense of more opportunities for other Christian religions, not necessarily more religions in broad. It also shaped a distinctive American Protestant identity. The Great Awakening thus represents more than just a religious revival. It was a crucial period that helped forge American religious identity and establish patterns that would characterize American Protestants for generations to come. Its emphasis on personal religious experience, democratic practice, and religious freedoms continue to influence American religious life today. The Great Awakening's effects extended beyond religious practice. It created shared experiences across colonial boundaries, encouraged democratic religious practices, and established patterns of religious revival that would characterize American Protestants for generations. The impact on legacy was the religious transformation. So once again, it broadened religiosity within America and encouraged people to find their personal faith and to find a church that fit for them. It also created institutional changes like opportunities for Protestant dissenters, Methodists, and Baptists, challenged authority of established churches, multiplied the number and variety of churches, and deepened Protestant influence in colonial life. For African Americans, the participation included both free and enslaved people of African descent. Sometimes this involved coercion. This led to the synthesis of African religious beliefs with Christian practices and created a foundation for distinct African American Christian traditions. It also influenced the formation of American identity. It increased unity across the colonies. It created a shared religious experience. It also developed common religious vocabulary among the colonists. It established intercolonial networks and then fostered a sense of shared identity. On the democracy side, it emphasized individual spiritual authority, reduced the importance of formal education for religious leadership, and encouraged lay participation and promoted religious volunteers. The religious landscape of colonial America was shaped by European traditions, but transformed by American experiences. The interaction between various religious groups and the emphasis on personal religious experience and the development of religious tolerance all contributed to a very distinct American religious identity that valued both passionate faith and religious freedom. This legacy continues to influence American religious life today, visible in our constitutional protection of religious freedom, our tradition of religious pluralism, and the ongoing importance of personal religious experience in American spirituality. Okay, that we're going to go into our time of discussion. So these were the questions that were asked of you. Why don't we split into 4 groups and go around in your groups and share what you found in your paper. Let's go before here. So let's say Monterey and Brady, once you came up with those 4 gals. And then you front 7 here, 8. Front 8 here can get together. Then you guys can get together. That's 3, I guess, huh? Let's just do 3. I'm gonna pause this to find that. So, yes. Actually, let's do this. Let's go split it down. Let's go. You 2 go over here with that. You 3 go with these 2 here, then you 4. Now we got 4. I'm not a math teacher, so